Did you know that Moonraker wasn't supposed to exist and was only made because Star Wars changed everything? Well, we all know James Bond went to space and fought a villain with metal teeth. But what you probably don't know is that the real chaos happened behind the camera.
Extravagant film. That was the concept. Bigger and better.
From a rewritten script that nobody wanted to a stunts that nearly killed multiple actors to an ending filmed, then completely changed, this 1979 film has more disasters than space shuttles. Film was never supposed to be made. Star Wars changed everything. For Your Eyes Only was scheduled to be the next James Bond film after The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977. Pre-production had already begun. Then, Star Wars opened in May 1977 and became a cultural phenomenon. United Artists executives watched Star Wars earn over $700 million worldwide and panicked. They demanded producer Albert R. Broccoli abandon For Your Eyes Only and make a Bond film in space instead. Broccoli initially refused, believing space was wrong for James Bond. United Artists threatened to delay financing unless he complied. Broccoli reluctantly agreed and chose Moonraker because it was the only Ian Fleming novel with space elements. The decision was purely commercial, chasing Star Wars success rather than following creative vision. For Your Eyes Only was postponed until 1981. The rushed change to Moonraker created production problems that plagued filming. Roger Moore refused to do his own stunts after nearly dying. Roger Moore had performed some of his own stunts in previous Bond films. That ended during Moonraker after a near-fatal accident during the cable car sequence. Moore was supposed to fight Richard Kiel on top of a moving cable car over Rio de Janeiro. During rehearsal, Moore nearly fell off when the cable car lurched unexpectedly. Only a last-second grab by a crew member saved him from plummeting to his death. Moore was so shaken he refused to continue. He told Broccoli he was done with dangerous stunts permanently. Stuntman Martin Grace performed all of Moore's cable car work. Moore later said, "I realized I have children who need a father more than audiences need to see me fall off a cable car." Grace himself was seriously injured during filming when safety cables failed. He spent months recovering from back injuries. The entire script was written in 8 weeks. Under impossible pressure, screenwriter Christopher Wood had exactly 8 weeks to write the entire Moonraker script after United Artists demanded the project change. No major motion picture script had been written that quickly. Wood worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, trying to meet the deadline. He suffered from exhaustion and stress-related illness during the writing process. The rushed schedule meant Wood had no time for revisions or polish. His first draft became the shooting script with minimal changes. Wood later admitted the script's weaknesses resulted directly from time pressure. The film's humor became broader and sillier than previous Bond films because Wood didn't have time to craft sophisticated wit. Dialogue that needed refinement went unrevised. Plot holes that needed fixing remained. Wood called the experience the most stressful 8 weeks of my life. Despite the circumstances, he delivered a workable script that allowed production to proceed on schedule. Jaws' character was only brought back. Because of fan mail, Richard Kiel's characters, Jaws had died at the end of The Spy Who Loved Me when his underwater base exploded. The character was never intended to return. However, Albert R. Broccoli received thousands of letters from fans asking about Jaws after The Spy Who Loved Me's release. Children especially loved the character despite his villainous role. Broccoli decided to resurrect Jaws for Moonraker without any explanation of how he survived. The script added a romance subplot where Jaws falls in love and becomes a good guy. This transformation pleased families, but frustrated longtime Bond fans who found it ridiculous. Kiel appreciated the steady paycheck, but admitted the romantic subplot was bizarre. The fan service decision exemplified how Moonraker prioritized commercial appeal over narrative consistency. Jaws' redemption arc felt tonally wrong for a Bond film. The Venice sequence required draining and refilling canals multiple times. The boat chase through Venice canals became a logistical nightmare requiring cooperation from Italian authorities. Director Louis Gilbert needed to drain certain canals to place underwater cameras and safety equipment. The process took weeks and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Local businesses complained about disrupted tourism. The Venetian government initially refused permission, believing the production would damage historic infrastructure. Broccoli negotiated for months before receiving approval with strict conditions. Canals had to be refilled every evening and drained again each morning during the 5-week Venice shoot. The sequence where Bond's gondola transforms into a hovercraft and drives through St. Mark's Square outraged preservationists. They argued vehicles were forbidden in the square and the production was disrespecting Italian heritage. Gilbert later admitted the Venice sequence was more trouble than it was worth. The complicated logistics consumed excessive budget and time. NASA refused to cooperate with production over scientific inaccuracies. NASA was approached to provide technical consultation and stock footage for Moonrakers, space sequences. After reading the script, NASA refused all cooperation. They objected to numerous scientific impossibilities, including sound in space, humans surviving explosive decompression, and spacecraft maneuvering like fighter jets. NASA believed the film would spread scientific misinformation and damage their educational mission. The space agency issued a public statement distancing themselves from Moonraker. This created publicity problems for United Artists. Production designer Ken Adam had to design spacecraft and space stations without NASA input or reference materials. He based designs on Star Wars aesthetics rather than realistic engineering. The space battle sequence bore no resemblance to actual orbital mechanics. Scientists and space enthusiasts criticized the film's absurd physics. NASA's refusal to participate contributed to Moonraker being the least scientifically accurate Bond film ever made. The skydiving opening sequence took 88 jumps to film. The pre-title sequence showing Bond skydiving without a parachute required 88 separate parachute jumps over 5 weeks. Stuntman Jake Lombard performed as Bond. Stuntman B.J. Worth portrayed Jaws. Cameraman John Glenn, who later directed Bond films, jumped with them filming aerial footage. Each jump provided only seconds of usable footage before jumpers had to deploy parachutes. The sequence required perfect coordination between 3 falling bodies at different speeds. Worth wore the 40-pound Jaws costume while skydiving, which affected his fall rate and maneuverability. Several jumps resulted in dangerous near collisions. One jump saw Worth's parachute deploy prematurely, nearly causing a mid-air collision. Another jump damaged camera equipment, costing $50,000. The sequence's 3-minute screen time cost over $500,000, the most expensive pre-title sequence in Bond history at that time. Worth called it the most dangerous stunt work I've ever done. Lois Chills was cast. Only because Barbara Bach was unavailable, producers wanted Barbara Bach, who'd played Anya Amasova in The Spy Who Loved Me, to return as Bond's partner. Bach declined, wanting to avoid typecasting and pursue other projects. After Bach's refusal, producers considered dozens of actresses. They offered the role to Catherine Deneuve, who turned it down. Jacqueline Bisset was approached but had scheduling conflicts. Lois Chiles, who'd retired from acting to study art history, was spotted at a party by a casting director. She hadn't acted in 2 years. Chiles was reluctant but accepted after reading the script. She found Dr. Holly Goodhead's character intelligent and capable. However, critics and audiences found her chemistry with more lacking compared to Bach's memorable performance. Chiles later admitted she wasn't emotionally prepared to return to acting. Her performance felt stiff and disengaged. The space station set was largest ever built for a film. At that time, production designer Ken Adam built the orbiting space station set at an unprecedented cost of £400,000. The set stood 3 stories tall and required the entire 007 stage at Pinewood Studios. It was the largest interior set ever constructed for a motion picture in 1979. The set included rotating sections to simulate zero gravity, although the rotation was rarely visible on screen. Over 100 workers spent 4 months building it. The elaborate design featured working lights, airlocks, and multiple levels. Adam incorporated design elements from Star Wars while trying to maintain Bond aesthetic. However, a catastrophic fire destroyed the entire 007 stage in June 1984, 5 years after Moonraker's release. The stage had to be completely rebuilt. The space station set was lost forever. No photographs adequately captured its massive scale and intricate detail. Michael Lonsdale was dubbed in post-production. Without his knowledge, Michael Lonsdale played villain Hugo Drax with a thick French accent. After filming completed, United Artists executives decided American audiences wouldn't understand Lonsdale's accent. They hired voice actor Robert Reedy to redub approximately 40% of Lonsdale's dialogue without informing the actor. Lonsdale discovered the dubbing when he attended the London premiere and heard someone else's voice coming from his mouth. He was furious and publicly criticized the producers for disrespecting his performance. Rietti's dubbing was obvious to careful listeners because the vocal tone didn't match Lonsdale's delivery. Critics noted the inconsistent voice work. Lonsdale later said the dubbing destroyed my performance and made Drax less menacing. The French release used Lonsdale's original audio. Only English-language versions featured the controversial dubbing. The incident damaged Lonsdale's relationship with the Bond franchise permanently. The film was banned in several countries for cultural insensitivity. Moonraker faced bans and censorship in multiple countries over sequences deemed culturally insensitive. Brazil initially banned the film because the Rio Carnival sequence portrayed Brazilian culture stereotypically. The scene where Bond's gondola hovercraft drives through St. Mark's Square resulted in temporary import restrictions in Italy. Venice officials were still angry about the production's disruption years earlier. The scene where Jaws meets his girlfriend Dolly, played by French actress Blanche Ravaillac, generated complaints about mocking disabled people. Dolly wore large glasses and braces, creating what critics called a cruel caricature. Several disability advocacy groups protested the characterization. China banned the film entirely for promoting Western imperialism, though the ban was later lifted. India censored portions of the space battle, claiming it glorified violence. These international controversies hurt the film's worldwide box office despite strong American performance. The pigeon double take became the most criticized moment in Bond history. The scene where Bond's gondola hovercraft drives through St. Mark's Square features a pigeon performing a comedic double take at the camera. This 3-second moment became the most ridiculed shot in James Bond franchise history. Critics called it the moment Bond jumped the shark. The pigeon gag exemplified everything wrong with Moonraker's tone: silly humor, overwhelming spy thriller elements. Director Lewis Gilbert defended the moment, claiming it was harmless fun that pleased families. Longtime Bond fans disagreed violently. The pigeon double take appeared in countless worst movie moments lists for decades. It symbolized how Moonraker prioritized broad comedy over sophisticated espionage storytelling. Roger Moore himself later expressed regret about the film's excessive silliness. Production went 60% over budget. Due to Star Wars chase, Moonraker's original budget was $24 million, already expensive for 1979. The final cost exceeded $34 million, a 60% overrun. United Artists executives were furious. The massive overages resulted directly from the decision to compete with Star Wars. The elaborate space battle sequence consumed resources far beyond original estimates. Special effects required new techniques and equipment that hadn't existed when the budget was approved. The space station set cost triple the initial projection. Location shooting in Venice, Rio, and Paris exceeded budgets when productions encountered unexpected complications. Albert R. Broccoli argued the overages were unavoidable, given United Artists' demand for a space-based Bond film. Alternate ending. The original scripted ending showed Hugo Drax successfully launching his nerve gas globes toward Earth before Bond could stop him. Bond and Holly escaped the space station as it exploded, but faced a devastating reality. Billions would die from the gas. The final scenes depicted their shuttle racing against time, landing to find military teams preparing for the gas's arrival. Bond and Holly watched helplessly as the first globe entered Earth's atmosphere. The script ended ambiguously, suggesting massive casualties were inevitable despite Bond's efforts. Test audiences hated this downbeat conclusion. United Artists demanded rewrites that showed Bond destroying all the globes before they launched. The filmed ending, where everyone celebrates, felt rushed because it was added during post-production. Moonraker could have been a grounded spy thriller called For Your Eyes Only, with realistic action and serious stakes. Instead, it became a desperate Star Wars imitation, with pigeons doing double takes and Jaws falling in love. The real ending was too dark. The budget spiraled out of control, and James Bond went to space because money demanded it.